This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. We got a great show lined up for you today. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a roundtable discussion to talk about the future of technology, artificial intelligence, blockchain tech moving forward. So joining me on the line to help us break this down is Anthony Lacavera. He is the founder of Globalive, which he founded back in 1998. He was also the CEO of Win Mobile, which he sold for $1.3 billion. So he knows a thing or two about these funding in tech startups and moving companies into that large space. Also joining us on the line is our good friend Lior Gantz of Wealth Research Group, wealthresearchgroup.com. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me here today. I got a lot of interesting things I want to get into. I don't know if you know, just last week I was in Italy covering the annual Bilderberg conference, and I did notice there was a heavy tech presence there this year. Representatives from Google, quantum computing was on the agenda, artificial intelligence was on the agenda, and they had a lot of venture capital firms that fund tech startups there as well, similar as to what Globalive does. So I'm really interested to get your perspective on this space and what on earth is going on here, because it seems like it's booming. Anthony, we'll start with you. I want to get your views on where you see this moving forward. But maybe before we get into that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Globalive. I believe you just launched a new joint venture no more than just a few days ago. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that project is all about. Sure. Yeah, Dan, thanks for having me on. And Lior, nice to see you. So guys, we're building at Globalive a next generation software company that's building technology using the latest and greatest in machine learning and artificial intelligence, as well as blockchain technology. And we're really a software commercialization firm. So we're developing these technology stacks, but we're really focused on getting them in the marketplace as quickly as possible. We think that it's very important to be first to market because a lot of these platforms and a lot of the software stacks that are being used are open source. So of course, there's just a flurry of development going on in this area. So we think being first to market is very important. Hence the joint ventures we're announcing, and the one we announced a few days ago with Flexity Financial is really all about the consumer financing space and what kind of artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies can be applied into the consumer financing space. And so we're building a number of interesting artificial intelligence-based solutions there, and of course also leveraging now the latest in blockchain to really help, at the end of the day, help Flexity Financial lower costs by the way of reducing bad debt, better adjudicating loans, and also increase revenues for merchants by helping the merchants also increase the ticket size of sales using our recommendation engine. So we got lots of things going on there. It's exciting. And Dan, to your point about the conference in Italy last week, but I mean, it's happening all around the world. Look, the fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and it's being fueled by AI and blockchain. And we've sort of got this confluence of all these different factors coming together to make this a reality. So you have IoT, Internet of Things coming in. You have 5G networks that are ultra fast coming in. You have cloud storage costs going down and down and down, and cloud computing capabilities rapidly increasing. All that's coming together to make AI a reality and a possibility for the first time in our, we've ever seen. So very exciting times. Yeah, exciting, fascinating, very interesting to see where this is going to go moving forward. And Lior, I know you yourself are also very forward thinking. Let's start off with you with how you see things projecting in the next 10 years. What are some of the main themes that you guys are focusing on for your investors over the next, let's say, 10 years?
Well, I think one important thing to understand is with artificial intelligence, there's a lot of negative sentiment towards how it will impact the jobs market. But what people need to understand, that's something we talk about in the newsletter a lot, is that AI is a tool to be used by entrepreneurs, by businessmen, and by governments to an extent to make sure that the jobs market stays robust, rejuvenates, and keeps the competitive advantage of countries such as the U.S., such as Canada, as North America, because China is doing the same thing on their end. In other words, the Chinese have, for the majority part of the 90s and the 2000s, funded U.S. debt. They bought trillions and trillions of treasuries but they've stopped increasing their treasury yield, their treasury holdings in 2010. Therefore, the real reason for QE was to make sure that the hole created by the, I would say, the disappearance of Japanese and Chinese creditors coming to the auctions was the reason that the U.S. needed new sources to fund the deficit. Now, China has initiated what's called the One Road, One Belt initiative, and they're also wanting to become the largest military power in the world by 2035. And this is an arms race, but it's a technological arms race. In other words, there's huge demand right now for machine learning, for AI, and what you see with Alexa and Siri, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's not even called AI by the real people that are involved with AI. So to kind of wrap things up, in the next 10 years, what you're going to see is plenty of job opportunities, new job opportunities, a lot of entrepreneurship, and a lot of very skilled people, both in the West and the East, advancing the world by creating solutions that go from anything from machine learning with traffic. You've seen it with driverless cars. You've seen it with all sorts of GPS applications. But I'm talking much, much more. You're talking predictive behavior in loan origination, like Anthony just alluded to. But this can go on to nutrition. Think of the amount of people that have problems with their nutrition. And, you know, your body can tell you a lot regarding what it wants: vegetables, fruits, protein, fat, etc. Machine learning, artificial intelligence will be able to solve a lot of the problems with the world's health situation. When do you need to go to sleep? When do you need to wake up? Optimal times. Obviously, you don't need to have, and this is something that people have a negative sentiment to, machines dictating your life, but they can advise. In other words, You're going to have an advisor. You're going to have tools that will help you. Technology is a tool. Just like if I stick my finger right now in the socket, I'll get electrocuted. So it doesn't mean that electricity is bad. Electricity can warm the house, can light the house, etc. So it's just a tool, and it's a brilliant tool because it's predictive. It learns our mistakes and helps us to correct it. And you know, it's one of the reasons that I'm personally a big investor into Globalive Technologies myself and with my fund.
Well, it seems that, you know, as you said, there's no end to the possibilities when it comes to what blockchain can bring to the table. And we know that it's very integral in cryptocurrencies, various cryptocurrencies around the world, and freeing people from the clutches of the big banks and the governments, and being able to interact with one another.
Sure.
So, you know, Lior, you mentioned China, and I know they use smartphones all the time for making transactions. Anthony,
they don't use cash anymore.
Yeah,
they just swipe
they
swipe the QR codes.
Yeah, so where do you guys see this going? Maybe we can start with you, Anthony, in terms of the cryptocurrency space and where blockchain tech is going to take that in the near future.
Yeah, there's no question that we're in a bit of a lull right now. Obviously, the sentiment towards cryptocurrencies has turned negative. Obviously, it was wildly positive earlier this year. I think this is all really just being driven by, truthfully, it's early days. There's capital coming into cryptocurrencies. There's net infusion of capital that drove up prices probably too much earlier this year, and now prices have come back. And I think we're going to see that go on, Dan and Lior. In my view, we're going to see this go on now for a number of months and years as the world starts to get adjusted to cryptocurrencies. And I'm a long-term believer, but I want to stress long-term believer. I think that there's going to be all kinds of short-term volatility, all kinds of short-term wild fluctuations in price and value, and we're going to find out that some of the coins that are out there don't actually make much sense long-term as well. Certainly, we're already starting to see some of that, in fact, actually. So I think if you're looking about blockchain with respect to cryptocurrencies, I think that it's good to think long-term. I think you got to think about utility tokens that really are building on a closed ecosystem. Really these scenarios where in the next 1, 3, 5 years, you can see a scenario where, for example, payments can be facilitated in any kind of existing business today. I mean, take a simple retail example. Today, a supplier to a retailer has to collect from that retailer. The retailer obviously has to collect from its customer. And there's a whole series of transactions that happen around that with credit cards and payments, and there's costs all around that. So you can envision where a token built on a blockchain could really be of value there is that you no longer need a payment intermediary for that transaction. You no longer need a bank involved in that transaction. So when you start to think about these closed, ecosystems is really where I think there's going to be the short-term biggest disruption, Dan, and the financial services industry and supply chain logistics, like that example I just raised, is really where I think most people believe we're going to see some near-term disruption. But anyone who's just looking to speculate short-term on cryptocurrencies, I don't recommend that for any long-term investor.
Yeah, I strongly suggest that people do their due diligence and weed out all the bad ones essentially. But there are some good ones in there. Lior,
no question.
Is the boom over in your mind, Lior, or where do you see this now moving forward? I mean, we had a huge year. The end of last year was massive, but it's reduced drastically at this point. Where do you see it going?
Dan, I think with regards to whether or not the boom is over or not, we need to look at the three uses of cryptocurrencies overall, and then we can decide if the boom is over or not. So the first use of cryptocurrency, the original use, was to become a medium of exchange, a peer-to-peer medium of exchange outside of the traditional banking system because of the fees of the middleman that Anthony alluded to. And then obviously because of more of the social aspect of this, the revolutionary aspect where you actually own your own currency, your own code, you store it, cold storage or otherwise, and you avoid the counterparty risk of the fiat monetary system, obviously introducing new risks as the high risk of default from some of these networks, etc. But the idea, the revolutionary idea behind it is to become a stable medium of exchange outside the system. Now, if cryptocurrencies were just that, were only that, then they will always trade after speculative mania's peak and bottom. They will always trade just above their mining production, just like any other commodity that you need to mine or use power or energy to explore, just like gold, silver, zinc, any other commodity. It trades just shy of its commodity price because the miners want to make a profit, obviously. So in other words, going forward, if the only use stays that cryptocurrencies are a medium of exchange, then whatever their mining cost is, it will just stay shy of it, except for times when there's speculative demand that comes in or a rush of demand. Now, the rush of demand can come in if cryptocurrencies act as digital gold, or people try to store fiat away from the system in cryptocurrencies. They have other means of doing that. Obviously, in inflationary times or just in crisis times, people move to real estate or precious metals or stocks. It doesn't matter. Or alcohol, collectibles. I mean, there's all kinds of strategies what to do with your fiat cash if there's problems. So you got these three different use cases. One being a medium of exchange, one being sort of a digital gold, and the third being a speculative asset to kind of play the trades with. Now, introducing a fourth one, which I believe will be more important than the other three, is this tokenization that is critical. For example, think of companies that will create products that will help industries license products among themselves using an internal coin. For example, let's say one company wants to use another company's food products on their shelves. They will use an internal coin in order to proceed with arrangements with smart contracts, etc. Cutting costs by taking out all the lawyers out of the picture, all the accounting, all the unnecessary red tape. Internal systems built on open source, on decentralized blockchain, on transparency can really help. And just think, going back to 2008 for a sec, if we had the transparency of a blockchain to see the balance sheets and the derivative exposure of many of the banks, they would have been able to save a lot of trouble for homeowners, for the government, for taxpayers, if they would have sat down and said, okay, here's exactly our situation, because trust was what was missing, and trust was what killed the intraday banking loans that actually, killed the banking system that fatal day. So all the trouble could have been, you could have refinanced, you could have wrote off losses, you could have could have told shareholders, look, there's going to be huge issues ahead. Many things could have been done had there been an open source, a decentralized way to look and to get transparent. The world is moving forward, obviously, with the fact that $8 trillion a year of fraud is inside of the business world right now, that could be avoided by more transparency and by less bad actors. So that's where I see really cryptocurrencies going in the future, because obviously if you go through the screen of the 1,500 projects that are right now, you got about 10 of them that want to actually act only as a medium of exchange, and you got about 1,490 that have a different use case. They want to tackle a niche, a problem, a very focused, industrialized solution, and that's where I think going forward you'll see a lot of these coins act as internal coins, like Walmart doing their own coin in order to make sure that people use and stay loyal to them, etc. It's a great tool, because once you hand out tokens, much like coupons or a club card, you keep customers loyal. So that's where I think going forward a lot of commercialization will come through.
Now, you mentioned the need for transparency, and I think in this age where we need to be hedging ourselves against what's coming down the road, I'm a fan of tangible assets myself, gold, silver. Where do you see this moving forward? You mentioned digital gold. How is blockchain technology going to redefine, reshape the gold and silver markets? Anthony?
Look, I think what has to happen as a first step to that is we've got to get into a place where we've got a regulatory framework, a paradigm that will work here. And there's a lot of people, of course, that advocate for, well, we don't need regulators as much. Cryptocurrencies have the promise of global trade, global transactions, transparency and trust, as Lior is describing in those examples. And so I really think that's kind of a utopian view that people have, that there's not going to be a critical role for government. I believe there is a critical role for government. I believe that the regulatory framework needs to be set out as clearly as possible, as soon as possible, so that people can start to really pin value. Dan, to your comment about, or to Lior's points about, in recessionary times, where people go. Well, they go where they feel safe. They go where they know there's a robust framework for value, and that there's controls, and that they can rely on, whether it's the United States or any other government, they can rely on the government backing up whatever is that underlying asset, infrastructure asset or collectible that they have. And so we don't have that yet for cryptocurrencies. We don't have that yet for these token schemes, tokenization schemes that are being built, that are opportunities to really build these closed ecosystems. I think the opportunity is there for regulators to step in now or very soon. And I realize that governments move more slowly than the marketplace often, but I think governments need to get in front of this one. And I think the governments need to cooperate on this one, because, so a lot of Lior's comments, it is global. We are talking about a global framework for transactions and trust and transparency and exchange of value. We are talking about it being global. It's crossing borders. Cryptocurrency doesn't know borders. So we really do need global collaboration on this in order that we get to a place where there's a stability that now investors can really rely on. And people that are looking to, should I be buying gold or should I be buying this cryptocurrency? They can say, well, I know this cryptocurrency is backed up by these regulations, backed up by these consortia of governments. I feel much more comfortable buying this as a long-term asset and a long-term safe place for value. And I just don't think we have that framework yet.
Lior, what do you think? Gold necessary in the digital age?
Sure. I'll tell you what, Dan. I'll answer your question philosophically and then practically. Practically, the blockchain. Practically first, obviously. Practically, the blockchain is going to be able to affirm your ownership of tangible assets. In other words, when you own stocks today, and stocks are tangible assets represented by a digital share, but when you buy, when you invest, when you partner with Anthony Lacavera, for example, in Globalive, you own these offices that are behind them. You own all the JV partners that have intellectual property, they have physical property. You own that, but you are representative of that ownership in a piece of paper or a digital form. Blockchain will only serve to affirm your ownership, so that no one can tell you, hey, that who owns your shares right now? Well, they're in these intermediary, in your brokers and the sub brokers, his broker, etc. When you want real ownership, blockchain is going to be able to do that with stocks, and obviously with real estate, with collectibles, with gold and silver, etc. So when you want real ownership, the blockchain is going to be able to take it to the next level in practicality. And just think of the untapped potential value just in the continent of Africa, where people they can't claim ownership of their land. For example,
Absolutely.
As an entrepreneur, if I was going to go now and look for a virgin beach where I can build a huge resort, and I don't know who owns this, and it doesn't matter how many regulators and how much government you put in place in a country that has problems, stability, it doesn't matter how many laws you put into force, that country is problematic. We tried a model where there's no government. We tried a model where everything is free and lawless and we have complete freedom. But life was very short and violent. In other words, you can't take out the government out of everything. Obviously, inside of government, there are people that corrupt the power of government because of the Pareto principle. I mean, 20% of the people are, they have issues. And if we allow everything
right on.
to just happen, you're going to have a lot more trouble. I mean, just think of what will happen today in the United States, where you have 450 million guns if there was no government. So taking out the government out of the picture is not sustainable and it's not realistic. But we got to realize that even if you slam a whole bunch of regulations, that doesn't help. Government and society are the same. We are the government. These people that are going to work every day in D.C., they were born and raised in the United States. They didn't come from outer space. Whatever we have, this is our society. We just got to work with it. As entrepreneurs, we only look forward to solutions. I mean, the past is the past. Whatever is done is done. And going forward, you can only shape society however you want it. And obviously, every country will look at blockchain and as AI and with AI as a tool. And whether or not it will work for them or not, it depends on the people and the government being sort of this one entity that needs to go back and forth within themselves. There's a lot of hatred towards the government right now in the United States, but it doesn't mean that the best way going forward is to abolish the government. There are many things that society needs right now, like a smaller government, less corruption on the higher levels, lower debts, closing down the deficits, but it doesn't happen overnight, and it happens because we, the people, demand it. So it's all about shows like yours, Dan, that keep promoting good values and good ideas, and just making sure that people, when they bring up their kids, they bring them up the right way, and therefore we'll have better politicians. There's no magic to it. The founding fathers were not from outer space. They were from here, on this planet, and they had values because that's what they were brought up, or that's what they contrapted into their own minds. So in practicality, first, blockchain will enhance your ownership, your asset ownership. In fact, I think most things will be on the blockchain with ownership on them. Your show, Dan, if you want to monetize it and you want other shows on YouTube to put it on their shows, you're going to be able to automatically get money for it. So right now, when
that's a really
sees
good
your
example,
show,
actually. Yeah, that's a great example. We just did that with Kodak One, Lior. I know you saw that. The Kodak One digital rights management platform we just built is all about that. To your point right there with Dan and how to monetize his show.
Yeah, so it's intellectual property, it's rights on everything, and it's globally going to occur. You're going to have global presence from day one. And philosophically, government or not, it's all about how we conduct our lives and live our lives. The U.S. Has a free enterprise system that has been able to unlock insane potential with many troubles and many problems, etc. But it's proven itself to be the best out of everything. I'm looking outside my window here at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. Silicon Valley is right behind me, and I'm taking a drive today to take a look at all of this, this vision that somebody had, and it became a huge financial district here in San Francisco. But you can look at any American city, and now you can go to China and look at what they're doing, and Europe in the same way. It's all around the world. People are looking to advance, but obviously it all comes at a great competitive cost, and sometimes people take the competitive spirit of the free enterprise system and warp it. So it's like you said many times on your show, Dan, you can't allow some bad actors, the minority, dictate how everyone lives their lives. So going forward, look, there's many troubles with how gold and silver are counted in the banking system, with huge paper contracts being traded. Blockchain can help to solve this, and hopefully government will enforce this. So here's where I want the government to come in and say, hey, these are bad actors. This is a problematic situation. Let's count all the gold in the COMEX, at the JP Morgan balance sheet, and everywhere else. Let's count it. Let's get so this is where you want government to come in. Remember, we all hate the police until we need them for a domestic problem, right? So it's just important to understand that the police is a tool, the government is a tool, and just work with it as an entrepreneur, find solutions, and bring value, and it will transpire in the way that we want. It's all about what we can do.
All right. Now, what about the Canadian market? Anthony, as I understand it, your company is Canadian. And so is this something that you focus on? And is there a potential to bring more artificial intelligence and blockchain tech to Canada and create more jobs there?
Well, it's really interesting, Dan. The Toronto area where we're headquartered has become recognized globally as a center for thought leadership and commercialization of artificial intelligence technologies. So we really are at the center of what is pretty widely regarded at this point by the academic universe, academia, as well as governments and institutions around the world looking to Canada for leadership in AI, and really just now the overall marketplace. When you look at the major technology companies that are putting significant headquarters in the Toronto area, the Southern Ontario region, whether it's Microsoft, Google, Apple, Facebook, I mean, they all have very significant presence here and ramping their presence quickly, because we really are in a place where when the rest of the world sort of abandoned AI in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, when, as we talked about earlier at the top of the conversation, when that network infrastructure, that processing power, the speed of networks, the cloud storage and cloud computing, when none of those things were there, the rest of the world sort of abandoned AI, and Canada quietly continued to invest very heavily in AI. So I decided to locate this company's headquarters in Toronto, in Canada, for that reason. But to your question, I mean, we're a global software company, so we've got joint ventures that we are forming around the world with leaders in respective industries, and I think it really is to the basis of this whole conversation surrounding blockchain infrastructure, giving us the opportunity to build technology stacks that are truly ubiquitous, that are global, that transcend a lot of the traditional restrictions of monetary systems that have been in place for decades or even centuries, close to centuries now. So I think that it's really not relevant where we're located from a customer and customer servicing perspective. We will have, and we already do have an office in Los Angeles where we're developing things like the Kodak coin, and we're working on a number of additional, the Kodak One DRM, digital rights management solution that we built and are commercializing. So that's actually based in LA, and in the Venice Beach area, as you guys know, I know Lior's in San Francisco today, but I mean, you guys both know That Silicon Beach, as it's now being called, is really starting to rival Silicon Valley. So we're we're staffing up there as well. But I think that when you look at different centers of excellence for artificial intelligence, certainly you got to point to Toronto, to Cambridge in the UK, to Silicon Beach and Venice Beach in Los Angeles, and of course to Silicon Valley. But as Lior mentioned a few times, when you really look at what China is doing and the One Belt, One Road project, which is just a massive set of artificial intelligence and blockchain startups and government-funded efforts to really bring China to the global forefront in AI and blockchain. I mean, we really have to have these centers of excellence in North America so that we can compete with China long term.
Yeah, all right. Well, long term, moving forward, maybe we can get some final thoughts from you guys on where you see this technology leading, and maybe some words of advice or something you could say to the naysayers. You know, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there in regards to this technology. Yep. So what words of advice or encouragement might you have for people who are kind of on the fence?
Well, you know, I'm an investor and an entrepreneur, not a tech expert. So what I follow and what I do is stay within my circle of competence. And what I do is I look for talent, and I look for where I can bring value by building relationships and partnering with people early on. So when I met Anthony, it was unique for me because, first of all, here's a guy who chairs a few incubators and accelerators. So he has leverage because he can tap young talent that is just starting out and help them to build careers as well and bring them into his brand with Globalive. And here you have, on the other hand, his existing networks. So not speculative young talent, whether or not this will pan out or not, but the existing relationships from 20 years of dealing with over 100 startups, and I think five successful exits, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you got it. Keep going, Lior. I like what you're saying.
and then you see a situation where he understands the real problem with technology companies and software companies, because I've been involved with many startups over the years, both where I came from Israel, where I was in the same house as a person who sold his company for $4.5 billion, and it was at the peak of the tech boom. I was right there when they announced it on CNN, and I was right next to him. So I know what it is to take a company from nothing and bring it into the spotlight. And when I saw that what Anthony understands is that the real problem is what we call switching costs. So and here's where entrepreneurs listening to this show, or businessmen, or just investors, can understand this. When you have a company and you run a few thousand computers for your employees, or you have a system or a software in place that everyone's using, if you have a new person coming in and say, "Hey, I got a great product for you. It's going to replace what your existing solution has, or it's going to replace the software that all of your employees work, and it's going to cut your cost by 7% across the board," you're not going to switch that easily, because the switching cost is insane. Retraining all your employees is a nightmare. Selling all your existing infrastructure for liquidation costs is a problem. And therefore, getting your foot in the door before it closes, being early, being first to market, is almost the ultimate barrier of entry for other companies. Look at Microsoft. I mean, this is the exemplary company for this. Try to switch out of their operating systems. Try to switch out of their systems. It's just remarkably hard. And therefore, it's sort of a captive audience. And what I saw with Anthony is that using JVs, using joint ventures, he's able to tap into existing customer base and just start to stack and stack and stack more solutions and sell to existing customers. It would be the same as, think Sony PlayStation. They sell you the console, which probably makes them little to no money, because all they want is the console in your hand, and then they start to sell you the games where the real money is. A pizzeria would be the same thing. The empty pizza is probably it's just the way to get going, and then all the additions is where you really make the markup. So just think about it this way, and then you can go to the granddaddy of them all, GoDaddy.com, which sells you the first domain, which a lot of companies can do, but they know if they can hit you first and sell you that domain, you'll keep renewing with them, because obviously who's going to change their domain provider, right?
Right.
Once you sell the domain once, you get a lifetime customer probably, and therefore they understood the need to have a brand. And I see this with Anthony, and if you go to wealthresearchgroup.com/live, you'll see a company vetted overview of the company. And we will cover this company for many, many years because they're commercializing AI and blockchain. While other companies, ceaseless companies and ceaseless people approach me and send me their investor deck, their vision, their business plan. And they say, "Hey, I don't have any money, but I think this is a great idea," or something. Anthony put 40% of the outstanding shares in his hands, so he's got deep pockets in the game. And then initially funded the company with 15 million of cash and asset equivalent. So you're talking about a guy who's building a monster, a potential monster here, and it's just a lot of fortune and luck that we can get involved when the company is 4 or 5 days old on the public market. So and then just so people understand, investors, the company also has a U.S. ticker, obviously for U.S. investors, and it's LVVEF. It's also in the report. It might be a temporary ticker to change to a permanent U.S. ticker, but it's important to understand that U.S. investors are starting to look at this company as well, and this is well before the institutions are coming in. So it's very early days, and I'm very excited about this, and I couldn't be more happy for Anthony to take the company public.
Awesome. I mean, you pretty much nailed it and covered it all there, Lior. Anthony, anything to add?
Yeah, look, I appreciate and with his business, his core business, his visibility in the marketplace, I really appreciate his support and his of course input as well. And that's I think what Dan and Lior, we're building technology that is relatively new. We're commercializing it as fast as possible, but artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies are all quite new. And what that means is that there's going to be not these quick hits like you might see in a cryptocurrency. These are nothing to do with that. These are really long-term investment plays that we're making. The joint ventures that we're building are really long-term. So when I talk to investors about what we're doing, I'm always stressing that. And I myself am a long-term builder. I've been a founder, CEO, entrepreneur my entire career for 20 years. Started with zero 20 years ago. Started my business, my first business, with a $25,000 small business loan. And since then have started up a number of companies, had 5 successful exits. And what I can say from all of that is that bringing technology to the marketplace is really hard. And there's definitely a lot of things that go wrong. And this business is going to have its challenges as well, which is why I know having joint venture partners that are truly aligned with us, with those existing customer bases where we can commercialize our software first, where we've got a partner who's totally economically aligned with us, and so that those switching costs that Lior talks about, yeah, they're still there, but now I've got someone who's profiting alongside us in making those investments, incurring those costs to make those switches, right? It's a very different sale than going to someone saying, you're going to save whatever percentage, you're going to save 10% of your costs, but take a chance with me and it might work, it might not work. I'm going with a partner who says, I'm aligned, and yes, there's going to be costs, and I'm going to save money, and then we're going to own this software together and license it around the world. That's the business we're building. I'm super excited about it. And I can be found at Anthony Lacavera on Twitter, Anthony Lacavera on LinkedIn. And those 2 social channels are really active for me because I just love looking at new technologies and new solutions. So there's great conversation on there. I invite everyone to join.
Awesome. I invite everybody to join as well. Links will be located in the description to Anthony's LinkedIn and his Twitter, as well as Lior's report on the company. So, gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining me today. Both of you keep up the great work.
Thanks, Dan.